Good morning. Everybody doing well? Ma'am, sir, honey?
Doing great.
Awesome. Where's your husband?
Getting donuts.
Okay. Why are y'all sitting back there? All right, any questions or follow-up from last night? Are y'all not a conversant group?
Not this early.
Ma'am?
Not this early.
Oh, not this early, okay. Today, this first session, we're going to be talking about husbands. What's the time of this session?
10 to 11.
Let a husband ask that. It would be funny. A husband have one response and the wives have another response. 2 hours.
10 to 11:30.
10 to 11:30. Okay, good. Okay, I just briefly share a little bit about our ministry. As I talked about last night, that it's been in 3 phases: building and leading a counseling ministry, phase 1, from 97 to 03, and then pastoring from 03 to 08, and then starting this ministry in 08. And the reason that I wanted to do this ministry, one, I didn't enjoy pastoring. I love people, and what I mean by not enjoying pastoring is that pastoring is you wear 40 different hats, and so you do so much, and you're so scattered and distracted, and which is fine. It's not that I couldn't do it, but my heart is really about people, helping people. And so as a pastor, you can only help people in a limited way because you had so many other responsibilities, make sure the air on's at the building, and make sure the grass is cut and the toilets are plunged and the flowers are on the stage and all the other things and small groups, and there's just a million things, event planning and talking with real estate agents and attorneys, and it just goes on and on and on. And all that's good, but it didn't allow me to really do where my heart was and is. And so in OA, I started thinking about the redemptive use of technology, how to use technology redemptively to where we can reach people globally with the practical message of Christ. So I wrote a blog post on July the 3rd, 2008. And then I wrote one on July the 4th, and July the 5th, and July the 6th. And I wrote an article every day for 2 straight years and just started really just pushing content on the internet. And people started reading it, and one thing led to another. And I had a blind guy in Atlanta write and said it would be easier for him to read my articles if I put them in audio. And so I spent a couple of years studying podcasting and how to do it, and then started podcasting. And then someone from Texas wrote and said, "Do you train?" And in business, the answer is always yes. I said, "Yes, we do that." I told Lucia I'll be busy this weekend building a training program. And so we built a training program 10 or 11 years ago, and it has really evolved into something nice where we train people to do biblical counseling, or what I prefer is discipleship. I like that word better, but those are the same words. And so we train people, and so now we have an online school and videos and podcasts and articles, and the articles turned into books, and it just kept going from there, and public speaking and so forth and so on. So that's our ministry. And so my second favorite book in the world, obviously my favorite book in the world is the Bible. But my second favorite book in the world is The Giving Tree. Have you ever heard of the Giving Tree? It's a kid's book. God used that book to pummel me in the best of ways years ago. And basically, it's the kid's book that has just a few words on each page, and it's mostly sketching, pencil drawing of a boy in a tree, and a tree. And the boy was very selfish, and the tree provided everything that the boy wanted. And so when the boy was young, the tree gave his apples to the little boy. And then as the boy grew and could not be content, could not be satisfied, the tree gave its limbs to the little boy so that he could build a house. And the boy was still not content, and so finally the tree said, I have no apples and my limbs are gone, but here, you can cut me down and you can build a boat and you can go far away. And so the boy did. And so the only thing that was left was a stump on the ground. And then the boy came back as an old man, and the tree or the stump kind of shook itself and was so happy to see the old man, the boy. And the tree was apologetic that I don't have apples, they're gone. Of course, he said that, I don't have teeth and I can't eat apples anyway. And so I would give you my limbs, and I have nothing to give. And the boy didn't want any of that. He finally came to the place of recognizing, of contentment and what satisfaction really is. And it's not in doing and going and all of those things. And so the tree offered himself as a stump. And the boy sat down, and the book ends with, the boy is happy. And there's a couple of points to that. One, he was a root out of dry ground. He had no form nor comeliness that we should behold him. And he was a root of Jesse. He was the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Jesus was just an unlovely stump root out of ground, but yet that root grew into a cross and a Savior and salvation, and that tree on Golgotha's hill. There's that picture there, and I'm pretty doggone sure the writer of the book was not thinking that, since that person was not a Christian. But I could see that in there. But then the book said the boy was happy. And when I met Lucia, that's what I told her, that she was the giving tree and that I'm the little boy. And I actually had a T-shirt made of that. I took a couple of a page from the book and gave it to a T-shirt maker and said, I want this on this T-shirt, which we still have. And then we had a couple of, what do you call those, champagne glass things. So I took two pictures, and the crystal shop sketched those two pictures on those two glasses, which we still have. But I told Lucia that the boy is happy. And I said that, I don't know if she'll do this or not, but when I die, I want you to put on my tombstone, the boy is happy. The boy is very happy. I'm very happy because Christ saved me, and I'm very happy because Lucia came into my life. And I'm very content. And then to be able to do the thing that I love the most, which is to help people who are struggling. I'm a crier, and I cry at all the movies where the dog runs away and then comes back over the hill, 2 hours later, and I'm just crying. And anything else that is remotely close to crying, I'm all in and I'm crying. But I did not cry for the first 29 years of my life. I cried when God finally broke my heart and taught me to cry. My brother told me one time, he said, "You cry ugly." And that bothered me some, but then I thought, I don't even look at myself when I cry, so it doesn't really matter. So if I cry ugly, I'm sorry, but I don't see it. Some people have told me that I'm bald, but I don't believe that. I don't see it. I mean, I don't look at myself in the mirror. I don't understand that whole process anyway. I don't know why you would look at yourself in the mirror. It sounds kind of vanity. It's like selfies. Selfies are, it's like, what is that? And then when you go on Facebook and you see, like, wow, she's got like 75 pictures of herself. It's like, huh, all right. I just find all that weird. So I heard that I was bald, but I don't know, and that I cry ugly. So I probably live in some kind of delusional state. Who knows? Maybe y'all do know. So our ministry, my mission statement is to take the practical message of Christ to every human on the planet and to live 25 years after I die. That's my mission statement. And the reason I have to live 25 years after I die minimally is because I want to take the practical message of Christ to every human on the planet. I want every person to hear about Jesus. And so in order to do that, to fulfill that mission statement, it requires the redemptive use of technology. There's an echo of omnipresence in technology. You can be everywhere at the same time. I've been all over the world this morning from our bedroom upstairs over here at Dan and Sharon's house. It's kind of phenomenal. Also, to live after you die is replicate yourself into other people, either through the books that you write or the individuals that like go through our school. And so after I die, we can continue on carrying the ministry forward. Currently, we're in a rebranding process because we're going to take my name. I want my name off of it. I've never liked my name on the ministry at all. I've never been comfortable with that. I'm the guy that doesn't have bumper stickers on his car, and I just don't like drawing attention to myself. This is really just gospel irony. This is complete gospel irony that I public speak for a living. As I said last night, I'm introverted. But this is what, it's God's fault, not mine. But I do want to take the name off the ministry, and so we do have a name, and we're in the process of rebranding the ministry. So it's our legacy phase. So when I drop dead, it will go on with this new brand. The ministry will be the same. It will just be called something different. So that's just a little bit about the ministry. If you want to talk about it, at any point, or about any of the mechanical aspects of what we do behind the scenes, if you want to know about blogging or writing books or podcasting or anything that you might be interested in, marketing, social media, all the stuff that goes with it, I would love to chat with you. I love what I do, and I've never been more content in my entire life. I am in the absolute sweet spot. A gentleman asked me a couple years ago, 3 years ago, he said, "Do you want to go plant a church?" I said, "No." He said, "Do you want to pray about it?" I said, "Sure, I'll pray about it." But the answer is no. I've already prayed about it. He didn't know that. I explained it to him, and after I explained it to him, he said, "Oh, I guess there's no need to pray about it." Yeah, I said, "What you're asking me to do, you want me to go back into pastoring where I can do discipleship 10% of the time when I'm doing discipleship 90% of the time now. Why would I do that?" And he understood that. And so the boy is happy. Or as we say down south, you're a hog in slop. That's a good thing right there. Or a hog in mud, And so anyway, I'm just a hog in mud, and I'm very content on a summer day. All right, so we're going to talk about husbands. I have lots to say. And then, husbands, you can drag your wives back for the second session, and we'll talk. We'll get them good. We'll talk about the wives. And so I think the thing that I want to say first is leadership is 90 to 95% verbal. Leadership is 90 to 95% verbal. That's a subjective statement. But I know this from experience that leadership is verbal. You can't lead without talking. You can't lead without communicating. As I said last night, God is a speaking God. We would be in a mess if God did not speak to us. If we did not have his words, we would be in a mess. And he has spoken. And he has given us his words in 66 books. And we are not at a loss. We have direction. We have a roadmap. We know which way is up and which way is not. We know which way to go and which way not to go, because God is a communicator. He is a community. The word koinonia, the Greek word koinonia, means community, and he communicates to us. And so as Christ followers, as men and women made in the image of God, we want to imitate that. And that in part means that we have to be speaking, and to bring it down even to a finer point in the marriage relationship, men leading, talking are absolutely essential, And so if you're going to lead well, you have to talk well. There is no way around that. And so and there's several issues that if you don't, one of the biggest issues with a non-communicating, and we're talking husbands here, but this applies to any person that doesn't talk. One of the biggest problems is that silence always requires interpretation. And so if you don't talk, then everybody in the room has to upload the silence with their own interpretation, trying to figure out what you're thinking or what you mean or what is going on in your mind. And when people upload their interpretation to silence, there's mystery in silence. And when you try to interpret the quiet dad or the quiet husband, you're almost always going to come to a wrong interpretation. And so you put yourself in a bad place if you're not talking, because you are open yourself up to interpretations that probably in most cases aren't even correct. And so the best way to circumvent that is to be a talking person. I had a couple come in a number of years ago, and the wife said, "My husband doesn't talk." And I thought, I just thought, oh, okay, well, that's different. I know it's possible. So is he a mute? Is he? And she said, "Oh, no, he's not a mute. He does talk." "Oh, you mean he doesn't talk to you," is what she was saying. So when you say he doesn't talk, that could be accurate if he doesn't talk at all. Universally, in any context, this man does not speak. And that is possible, but that is an outlier, obviously. And so as we honed in on what she really meant, she was saying, "He does not talk to me." Now, the good news for them is that he does talk. He does talk. He has the ability to form words and to project them out into space in an audible way where you can hear them. He just doesn't do that to her, with her. And so once we realized that he had the physical ability to talk, then we had to get underneath what is going on in his heart as to why he was making choices not to talk to her. And of course, he didn't like her. Would probably be the best summation of why he didn't talk. So he has chosen the silent treatment. The silent treatment is a form of anger, is what silent treatment is. And so if you choose silent treatment, then since silent treatment is not in the Bible, whenever you're talking to people and trying to help them through problems, you want to recategorize what they are saying into biblical language, because you want to move all of the help that you do into the Bible. And then once you move it into the Bible, now you can start moving forward, because the Bible gives us clear direction. So if someone says that he does the silent treatment, okay, well, let's redefine that. Okay, well, that's a form of anger. And so now we're talking about murdering, which is what James said. And so why is he murdering you? It's a silent treatment. Another way of describing silent treatment and why it fits so well in the category of murder Murder says, if I physically kill you, I don't like you, and so I murder you in the way that we understand murder. I get rid of you. Silent treatment, that's the most aggravated form of murder, obviously, physical death. But if you move murder on a spectrum all the way to the other side, you would have silent treatment. Silent treatment says the same thing. It says, I don't like you, but I'm not going to kill you. I'm just going to pretend you don't exist. And so at both of these opposites, it's getting rid of the person, either physically or pretending they don't exist by not communicating to them. And then within these two polar opposites, within this spectrum, you have all these other forms of anger, like frustration, as I talked about last night. And so the two extremes of murder is physically killing or pretending the person doesn't exist. And so when you are doing silent treatment to an individual, you are hoping, asking, pretending, suggesting that that individual does not exist. They're not here. I'm treating them as though they are not here. And so it is a subtle form of murder or anger. And so then when you get inside of this, why are you murdering her, or why are you angry at her? And then you can start unpacking what is going on in the heart, hoping that the individual will come to a place of repentance so that he will stop not talking to her and begin to communicate to her and begin leading her. And so my point here is that to lead well is to talk well. And it's absolutely no excuse to say I'm an introvert, I'm passive, I don't talk, or I was born that way. Now you can say that and all those things be accurate, but that's why we have a gospel. We have a gospel because we're all born that way. We're all born dysfunctionally. When the gay person says, I was born that way, I don't argue the point. Probably were. Maybe. I'm not arguing the point. If you have an affinity toward the same sex, okay. It's possible. It's absolutely possible. I don't think anyone could argue with that. Are you typing these out as I'm doing this, Josiah? Oh, yeah, you're good. That's good. Where was that? Oh, the gay guy. We're all born dysfunctionally, and I was born quiet. I was born as a non-talker, and then I continued to train myself to be a non-talker because it kept me out of as much trouble as I possibly could in a volatile home. It's keeping your head down. I was the turtle in the shell. And so I trained myself not to talk. And then my salvation, lowercase s, as a child was television. And so I found myself getting lost in through the portal of television so I could escape my home life. It's why I like wrestling. Y'all like wrestling? Y'all from up north, I'm sorry. Do you like wrestling? Do y'all enjoy wrestling? Because y'all talk funny. You don't? Well, the 3 R's in the South are wrestling, racing, and reading. Reading's not that important. I mean, religion, I'm sorry. Wrestling, racing, and religion. And I love wrestling. Because in wrestling, there is a winner and a loser, and it's not fake. So let's don't get into it, okay? It has a winner and a loser, and so I was reared on wrestling as a kid. I love wrestling. I don't watch it anymore because it became so provocative, and sexual and all that nonsense, so I don't watch it anymore, but I may or may not late at night watch an old YouTube clip of wrestling from, the 70s, but... And then, by the way, when Lucia and I were dating, I took her to a wrestling show in South Carolina. She told her girlfriends at work where she was working that he's taking me on a surprise date. She was all jazzed about it. And I didn't tell her where I was going. And So I went and picked her up. There was a couple of mistakes I made, maybe more than that. It's probably a list, but one of those was Wednesday night. And of course, good Baptists go to church 3 times a week, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. And so her parents won't know where I was going to take her on Wednesday night, and it wasn't to the church meeting. And so, but anyway, I got out of there with her, and so we went down the interstate and to a neighboring town. And we went to the wrestling show. That was her first time to ever see wrestling, and she was already in her late 20s by that time. That's a shame. I mean, it really is. But anyway, I broke her in good, and so she enjoyed it, or she says she did. And so then at the end of the show, you won't stay late just to take it all in, get your money's worth. And so we went down there to where they were breaking down the ring at the end of the show. And there was an old wrestler who doesn't wrestle anymore. His name is Klondike Bill. And he was helping to break down the ring. And I knew who he was. And I said, Klondike, hey, I want to do you let me take your picture with my girlfriend here? She's never been to a wrestling show before. And he said, no, I'm busy. And he was very dedicated to his job, taking that ring apart. And I said, Klondike, I used to watch you in Charlotte, North Carolina at the Park Center wrestle back in the 70s. And he looked at the guy that was helping him. He said, see, I told you I used to wrestle. This guy used to watch me at the Park Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. And he jumped down out of that ring and he grabbed Lucia. He did. I got that picture on my desk right now. If you walk in my office, that picture of Lucia and Klondike. He's short. Lucia was as tall as he was. He passed away a few years ago. Bless his heart. Bless his soul, sorry. That's how you gossip about somebody. If you're going to gossip about somebody, if they're alive, you gossip about them, and then you say, bless his heart. That's if he's alive. And then if you gossip about them and they're dead, you gossip about them, then you say, bless his soul. So that's how you distinguish if they're dead or alive when you gossip about somebody. We're talking about communication here. So anyway, the television was a portal through which I escaped. And so I was doubly ensconced. I was case hardened to not talking. And then when I came to terms with the gospel began to, rattle my cage, not just in a salvific way. God regenerated me. That's the ultimate cage rattling. But then the gospel is not just for salvation. The gospel applies to sanctification as well. And so God began to work in my heart post-salvation and my sanctification to mature me, to grow me up so I would not be a newborn babe forever. It's called failure to thrive when you're born and you can't grow and you're 17 years old and you're still in a bassinet. That's failure to thrive. And so I wanted to be mature in Christ, and to be mature in Christ, part of that meant a lot of changes. As Paul said in Ephesians 4:22, that we have a former manner of life, and it's corrupt and it's deceitful. And I trucked all that former manner of life into my current salvation experience. And so I was changed eternally, spiritually. The light was on, but I still had a former manner of life of a quarter of a century of being that way. So I was born that way, and I learned through habituations to stay that way, to be a non-talker. But coming to terms with the gospel in the area of communication meant God is a speaking God, and the gospel is about going and doing, and it's always moving from yourself. Christ, our first missionary, came from his place to our place to help people, and I want to imitate that, so I had to learn how to talk. I had to talk. And so I don't know if you husbands or any of you are quiet, or you enact the silent treatment or whatever. I would just appeal to you to, if it's a true caughtness in Galatians 6:1, where you get caught that way, that you would reach out to someone and get help so that you can communicate. We don't want to treat people that way. We want to talk to people. We want to let them know what we're thinking. We want to build them up with our words, and our children. They need to hear Our wives need to hear our words, and our children need to hear our words. They need to know what we think, and there is another reason that I don't say a lot, but it drives why I have this website. There's a very personal reason other than what I described to you earlier, which is true, but this driving reason to put my words on the internet in a big box store, a sanctification center called our website, is because it's my gift to our children. I'm doing this for my children. And there's the reason for that is because in 1994, Lucia and I were at a family reunion on our side of the family in North Carolina, and every 2 years there's a different patriarch or matriarch that would lead the reunion. And so this particular year, the patriarch who was talking, he read an excerpt from a Civil War journal from someone up in his tree. If it's our tree, he was probably a prisoner, not a soldier or whatever. But nevertheless, he read it, and I sat there and I thought, wow, that is so cool to hear the words of someone 100 years ago. And then I immediately got to think that I don't know what my daddy thinks about anything important. I don't know what my daddy thinks about life or any. I know what he thinks about me. He said, "You're no son of mine." I mean, I got those sound bites that are permanently etched on my mind. But I don't know anything of value that my daddy thinks. And then I got to thinking that if the Lord, like if we do get married and the Lord gives us children, then I want our children to know what I think. And so that day, I started writing a journal article every day since 1994, and it's 2001 now. Every day. And so some people say, well, how do you write so much, like articles and stuff? Because I started in 1994, not knowing that it was going to turn into actually a ministry. Writing's easy because I've been doing it for so long. It's not something that I think about. I can just do. And so I wrote in journals, and so there's stacks of journals in our attic before the internet. And I won't let our children read them because they got curse words in them and other stuff. They're very raw. I just write what my day is, and sometimes I'll curse. I'd write curse words in there, like shoot and darn and heck. And I don't want my children to read those. And we don't say the S word in our house either, which is stupid. We never use that word because it's such a bad word. To say that to somebody is kind of harsh. And so we don't use those words, but they can read those in the journal, and I won't let them read them till after I'm dead, and I won't care then. But they did find them a few years ago, and so we brought a stack of them down, and we opened them up to, my oldest at that time said, "Daddy, what is a journey?" I said, "That's not journey, that's a journal. This is what a journal is." She couldn't read the word. And so I opened it up to March the 9th, 2006, and I read that page. And that page was about Lucia walking around the living room all fat and ready to give birth. That was the day our youngest was born. And they read the story of Anza's birth, and they were just like, "Let's read another one." And we read some more. And then eventually it evolved to writing about my thoughts about sanctification, which turned into this ministry. And so our website is a gift to our children because I don't know when I'm going to die, and I want my children to know what I think. I want them to know what I think about God and life and sin and marriage and all of these things. And so if I do die, like that Civil War journal that I read in 1994, our children can say, "Well, what does Daddy think about anger?" Daddy used to call the silent treatment murder. uh, and then they can read that and get my perspective on it. So that's a background reason, because I want my children, I want them to know my words now and in the future. And it's important that we communicate. And so I just make the strongest appeals to if communication for men. Now, and also this applies, and I don't even have to say it to you women. You see, one of the secrets in counseling is that I have an ally working the room right now. His name is Holy Spirit. And so I don't have to worry. I don't have to point out anybody, because I have an ally and he works. He's working the room right now. And that just brings me so much comfort to know, pun on comfort there, just threw that in there. But it brings me so much comfort to know that the Holy Spirit is just working. And so this applies to you ladies too. That if you're given to the silent treatment or being non-communicative, then I would just encourage you to address that. Okay, that was the introduction. In this talk, I want to talk about, I'm going to make a distinction between hierarchy and then equality. And so I'm just going to be talking about hierarchy in this part to husbands, meaning that all people are equal under God. A husband is no better than a wife, just not. Children are no better, or parents aren't any better than children under God. We're all image makers, okay? Not image makers, we're all made in the image of God. And so we're all equal under God. And so two things can be true at the same time. But also within God's economy, he's given us hierarchies. And there's lots of hierarchies. There's political hierarchies where we submit to the government. There's civil authorities in our life. There's school teachers where we submit to, we live in that hierarchy and we submit to those who have authority over us, like school teachers, pastors, Andrew and the other leaders here at the church. Obviously parental hierarchies, parents and children. And so we can live like this within hierarchies, and we can all be made in the image of God and be equal too. But in this talk, I just want to speak to the hierarchy aspect of, in the hierarchy, by the way, the husband is not the leader of the home. The husband is not the leader of the home. If the husband's the leader of the home, then you're in a world of hurt. The leader of the home is God. And so in the hierarchy, it doesn't go up to the husband and stop. The hierarchy is God, Adam, Eve. That's the hierarchy. And so God is on point. And that's why I say if the husband's the leader of the home, you probably are headed into a mess. My wife don't want me leading the home. She wants me following God. And she wants me hearing from the Lord and being a Christ-like human being. And if you want to bring comfort to those who are behind you, if you want to bring comfort to those who are following, then you want to be very clear of who the leader of the home is. So the true orientation of the home is God, the man, the wife, the children, and the dog. And that's the hierarchy. Because we wouldn't have a cat, but I mean, dog, you'd have a dog, of course. But that would be the true hierarchy of the home. And so I want to speak just about the hierarchy. Now, the way that we talk about it in our home, or have historically, is buffaloes and butterflies. And we use that as a metaphor. And you can imagine who the buffalo is and and who the butterfly is. And I realize it's a bison, but it sounds better to say buffalo. But so it's buffaloes and butterflies. And a buffalo is a majestic, strong, braced against the wind person who's out on the prairie and just brings that comfort and strength and power to the home. And then the butterfly is that dainty, pretty, fragile, little creation of God that just brings so much beauty to the home. And in God's reasoning, which is still a bit mysterious to me, he wants to bring a buffalo and a butterfly together and have this symbiotic symmetry, this symphony in this beautiful relationship. But for a buffalo and a butterfly to live together, to cohabitate for the glory of God is not easy. And where I come with butterfly is what Peter taught us in 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 7, a delicate vase. She is a delicate vase. And so we want to be able to live with them. Now, Lucia she has this thing when I am misbehaving, what she would do. She used to do this. She hadn't done it in a while, and I think I know why she stopped doing it. But early in our marriage, she used to, like if I were sinning or something, she would go, kind of like a buffalo. She'd do that in the kitchen. And I think the reason she stopped doing that, because if you do that to a buffalo, it sounds like a mating call. You see, buffaloes are kind of thick-headed and dense, and so she's thinking one thing, would you stop this? And I'm thinking, you want to start this. So we got our wires crossed. So I think that's why she stopped snorting in the kitchen, but she was trying to signal to me to stop being a knucklehead. So anyway, and she did experiment a few years ago with some monarch butterflies, and she got the milkweed plants, right? Milkweed plants and the silkworms, right. And so we put them in the upstairs bedroom and under a little fluorescent light, and those silkworms just eating those leaves until they were nothing but almost like sticks that were left, and then they turned into a chrysalis, and they were that way for a while, and then they started coming out of I guess it's chrysali, maybe the plural, whatever, but they began to come out of their little homes. And we watched that, and it was a phenomenal thing. And when the butterfly was coming out of the chrysalis, they were moving toward the warmth of that light, and they were kind of gnarled up and moist. And then as they got closer to the light, they began to unfurl, these monarchs, and then they were like this, and it was just beautiful, and it was gorgeous to watch them, just this metamorphosis as they were coming out of the chrysalis. As I was watching that, I was just getting convicted by the second, because it was reminding me of my wife and the fragility of my wife and the environment of our home, that the environment of our home needs to be warmth, and it needs to create a space to where she can feel free. Not like this. There's a lot of wives that are kind of drawn in like this, and there's a tenseness and an anxiousness about them because their buffalo is just just snorting and stomping, in the house all the time, and there's not a freedom to be able to relax and to be like this. And so as I was watching that, God was just it's like, seriously, we're going to do this now? Lord, yes, and it was just convicting me, of how I treat her and how we need to create an environment of grace in our home. And it was a good moment. Obviously, it was a forever memory. And that's what we husbands need to do to our wives, is to create that environment of grace in our homes. Part of that is how we communicate to them and how we care for them so that they can be free to be the way that God made them. And when the buffalo and the butterfly are living in that kind of symmetry, it is symphonic. But it takes work on the man's part to lead and to create that kind of environment where everybody can flourish in the home, and it's not this heavy-handed, authoritarian, dominating, environment or an oscillating environment that goes from heavy-handed authoritarianism to, like say the silent treatment. But just bringing that consistent communicative warmth in the home that gives everybody direction. And then it allows the wife to be who God has called her to be. Now, I am not suggesting that all the sanctification problems in your wife are your fault. She has a responsibility before God to walk in holiness and grow and mature. And so I do want to make that point. She's not a victim, or should not be, in the sense as I was talking about victimization last night. If she continues to carry vicariously whatever happens to her, then that in itself is an issue that she would need help to work through. However, as husbands, we don't want to be complicating problems. We don't want to complicate whatever complications that she has. We want to be a minister of grace to her. We want to disciple her. The husband and wife should be their primary disciple makers. Husbands, the person who disciples you more than anybody else should be your wife. And wife, the person who disciples you more than anybody else should be your husband, because nobody got more intel on you than your spouse. I mean, these are the people we sleep with. This is 24/7 relationship. They know you through and through. They know you better than anybody else. And so I call it leveraging your assets. I would be a fool not to try to get Lucia to speak into my life and to disciple me, because she has more knowledge about me than any human on the planet. And so that seems a little foolish not to invite her into my space and say, I want you to speak into my life, my blind spots, things that I don't see. She says things to me sometimes, and it's like, do I do that? I don't even know I do that. It's like, wow. And she does that quite often. In fact, I will get ready to say something. You're talking about finishing sentences. She will. She says, oh, was I about to say that? It's like, yeah, that's what you were about to say. I mean, they know so much about us, but that goes both ways. And a husband and wife should be inviting each other into their space so that they can provide discipleship care to each other. The word husband is an old English word, and it means husbandman is what the word means. And you'll see that in the King James Bible, the word husbandman. And so husbands are husbandmen is what they are. And what that means is a tiller of the soil is what it means. A husbandman is a gardener. He's a gardener is what he is. He takes care of his garden. And many times in counseling, if you want to do leadership assessment of a man, if you want to see what kind of leader he is, then what you would want to do is to spend some time looking at his garden. Because nobody has been affected more by his leadership than his wife. Nobody has been affected more. And if you were to, like, say, you were going to hire a man to come to your house and to build a garden out back on your property, and you wanted to interview the man, I would recommend what you do is you go look at a couple gardens that he built. Don't talk to the man. Look at the garden. The garden would tell you a lot about the man. Lucia does square foot gardening, and she grows stuff in her backyard. And if you didn't know her, you could walk out to her square foot gardening when it's really ripping and roaring and look at it and not even know who did it, and you would conclude, well, I don't know who this person is, but they know a thing or two about gardening. And so if a man, like, say, wanted to be a pastor, one of the first assessments that I would want to make, if he's been married more than 5 years, is his garden, just to get a feel for his leadership, how well he has led. Our spouses are a reflection of the work. Now, again, I'll say again that they have a responsibility in their own sanctification and growth, but we have a huge impact on them. Not just a huge impact, but we have a biblical responsibility to nourish and cherish our wives, for example, and that's in Ephesians 5:29. The word nourish means to grow. We are to nourish. We are to grow our wives. We are to come alongside them and help them in their sanctification. We are to cherish. The word cherish is the word warm. This goes back to the monarch butterfly story, that we're to create that environment of grace so that they are feeling our efforts to help them to grow. And they're in this environment that we're cherishing them, and they feel cherished. They feel cherished by us, and a lot of that will have to do with how we communicate to them. And so she reflects our leadership. Your wife reflects your leadership, how well you have been doing. There are two words or two questions that every woman in the world asks. And it's the two most important questions that they will ever have when it comes to relationships. And it doesn't matter if the girl is 3, 33, 103. These questions are always her most important questions. It never changes. These are the questions that she wants answered in her life. The questions are, one of them is, will you love me? And the second one is, will you protect me? Love and protection are the two most important questions in a girl's life. Now, you could go back to Genesis 2 and kind of see why that makes sense. In Genesis 2, God made Adam for himself. And so the hierarchy was being built. God, Adam. And then he was making Eve, not for God, but for Adam. Now, I would suggest that we men put ourselves in Eve's shoes. We'll just temporarily identify. That's not funny. But anyway, we're just a weird culture. Golly. But, so, we're just going to temporarily identify. So, we're going to be, so if you were Eve, and you are about to hook your wagon to Adam, what two questions would be important to you? Like, is this a suicide mission? I think that if I were Eve, I would ask Adam two questions. Are you going to love me? As opposed to, you going to be mean to me? I mean, so what girl is going to say, hey, I kind of like you. I'd love to get married to you, but I mean, will you be mean to me? That doesn't make sense. No, I'm going to hook my wagon to you, but I need assurances. Are you going to love me? It's common sense. And then the other one is, I'm going to hook my wagon to you, Adam, and I hope it ain't safe. I know it's a wild ride. No, people don't think that way. The two most important questions that a woman would have, even though they won't articulate it, and maybe you ladies have never thought about this, but I have. I thought about me personally in these temporary moments of identifying as Eve. Will you love me? Will you protect me? And I've seen it a lot in counseling. And I've seen it with, there's three men in a girl's life, in most girls' life. The first man in a girl's life is her daddy. It's her daddy. The second man in a girl's life is her husband if she gets married. And then the third man in a girl's life is Christ. And he's the only one that can completely answer that question. For God so loved the world that whoever believes in him will be eternally protected, saved. Nobody will pluck you out of the Father's hand, John 10:28. And so you are eternally loved and secure. That's where the answer is. That's where it's ultimately answered. But there are echoes of that where we girls receive pictures of the Father through their father. I was counseling, a mom came in and was her teenage daughter, I'll say Susie, was acting out. And I asked some questions of the mom about their parenting model. And the mom said this. There's 4 things that I asked specifically. And the answers were, she said that Susie was acting out in every sphere of her life but one. There was just like one area in her life. It's the only area in her life where she was not a knucklehead. And that was school. But in every other sphere of her life, she was just a hellion. And then I asked about the parenting model, and she said that, well, I kind of, rear Susie, and my husband, he takes care of Tommy. And then I asked about her strength, which I already knew the answer to. In counseling, you ask questions not to learn information, but you're asked questions to lead people so they can learn information. I'm not talking about details. There's details you can't know. But when it comes to counseling the heart, you already know what the answer is, and so you're asking questions to help them. So it's when God said, Adam, where are you, Adam? It's not because God didn't know where Adam was. Adam didn't know where Adam was, and his mother didn't know what was going on in Susie's heart. I did, she didn't, and so I was asking questions to lead her to try to think through and discover what's going on. Well, when she already said that Susie acts up in every area of her life but school, and she already said that the parenting model is that I rear the girl and my husband rears Tommy, then it was evident that Susie had a high IQ, that she was smart, she was very intelligent. And the reason that you would come to that conclusion is because, and then the mother said it later, she said, Susie, she asked me when she was really little, like 5, she said, Mommy, how come Daddy loves Tommy and doesn't love me? Susie had already concluded that if this house catches on fire, I think Tommy's going to be okay. But I'm not sure I'm going to be okay. And then Susie went into kindergarten, and she took a test, and 2 and 3. And she started getting smiley faces back on these tests, started getting check marks and stars. And she felt something that she had never felt before. She felt loved, appreciated, approved, a little bit of significance. She felt accepted, and she felt safe in that environment. I can succeed in this environment. Her mother began to see that. Her questions were being answered. Will you love me? She knows that she will be loved in this environment. She knows that she'll always be safe in this environment. The problem is that she was becoming self-reliant. She was relying on her own strength to manipulate love and protection under her own power. And so they were raising an idolater, a self-reliant person. And then Susie would come home every quarter or whenever with her report card and have all A's. And everybody in the room would give her a standing ovation. Nobody in the room realized they were applauding and encouraging a straight-up, hardcore idolater because she was making straight A's. It was her only way to survive. It was the only way to feel good about life, to feel loved and to feel safe, because her father did not communicate that to her. And then Susie becomes married to a man, and she already knows that in order to have a good relationship with this man, she has to perform under her own strength, because it's a conditional relationship, which is the same relationship that she had with her father. So she works within her own strengths to manipulate a relationship where she can receive the love that she craves and make sure she's not going to be hurt. And then she becomes a Christian, which is just a setup for legalism. Just tick the box, hit all the marks, do the religious stuff, show up at the building, go through all the performance because I'm safe, I'm a self-reliant creature. She's getting her questions answered, but she's answering them herself through self-reliance, relying on her own strengths. I told her mother, I said, one thing you can bet on, not that Christians bet, but if they did, one thing that you could bet on is that Susie will never misbehave in school. And she might even become a professional student, because that's the only place where she can get her questions answered. And so the two questions that, and I know that as a dad, that our two little girls that aren't little anymore, but when they were little, I knew. I knew what they wanted. They wanted their daddy to love them and to protect them and for them to feel secure. If that doesn't happen, typically what happens, these little girls grow up and become teenagers, and they know how to manipulate love. They know how to get that boy, code name for boy is hormones in tennis shoes. And so hormones in tennis shoes comes walking along. And she's craving love and protection. And so she will manipulate by how she dresses, how she looks, how she coerces the situation. And hormones in tennis shoes, it's just, we guys are so easy. We're just so easy. She reels him in. She feels love, but it's not love, it's lust. But it feels like love. And I'm with my boy, and so it feels safe. And so I'm getting my questions answered, but that's not what is going on here. And you will continue to have to manipulate that relationship all of your life. And remember, the guy that you reeled in, he came in because he was lusting after you. He's not thinking about loving you and protecting you. He's thinking about getting you in the bed, is what he's thinking about. And so now you have this twisted version of love and protection. And that has to be fixed, because it's two self-centered people who have come into a relationship. I want this, and then the boy wants this, and then they live that way. There's an article on my website called Sex Before Marriage is a Trail of Tears. If you have sex before marriage, and almost, I would say 95+% of all marriage counseling that I've done, when you start unpacking it far enough back, you will find that they fornicated before they were married. And that's just the tip of the selfish iceberg. And they bring that selfishness in other iterations throughout the marriage until they get to the point to where the marriage is breaking up, because it's just selfishness. It's just selfishness. And what happens a lot of times with girls is that they want to be loved and protected so much that they can. I'm not giving them an out on this, but I'm saying they would rather give that up and have sex rather than losing this love and protection that they feel, that they think they're getting, and so they have sex. They'll compromise that so they can hold on to this, and they don't realize that what they're doing. And if they don't right that ship at some point, then it's hard to recover from that. And that's why in so much marriage counseling, if you work it back to origins as far as that relationship is concerned, you'll see in most cases, 95% of the time, it started selfishly. And that act kind of communicates the selfishness of the relationship. And so the two questions that every husband can answer for his wife: I want Lucia to always feel loved and always feel safe. Always feel loved and always be protected, and I have a responsibility to do that. And then if you have girls, you want your girls, your daughters, you want them, Daddy loves me. Daddy protects me. I'll finish with this, the number one or the best descriptor of a man, there's one word that describes a man better than any word in the Bible, and that word is the word father. That is the best descriptor of a man. And it doesn't matter if the man's married or not. It doesn't matter if the man has children or if the boy has children. Fatherly, being fatherly. Our son, who's now 18, as we watched him grow, he's fatherly. He's fatherly. He has these fatherly qualities. He protects his sisters, for example. He loves his sisters. He protects his sisters. He opens the car door for his mother whenever they're together. That he will open the car and let her get in, open the car door, let her out, open the car door. He's very fatherly. He's not married, never had a girlfriend, and doesn't have children that we're aware of. But he's very fatherly. And so it doesn't matter if you're married or not. It doesn't matter your age. But for the male, being fatherly, because we communicate who God the Father is. And the daughter's first definition of who God the Father is comes from her father, because that's the first father that she knows, and that is the most imprinting description of what a father is. And that was one of the reasons that legalism for me was so palatable, because I lived in a conditional relationship with a father. And so when I became a Christian at 25, it went into the fundamental Baptist movement and became a hardcore legalist. I loved it. It fit perfectly, because I like rules. Just tell me what the rules are, and I'll tick all the boxes, and God will be happy with me. My father would be happy with me if I did all the right things. And because I could never do all the right things, I just kept quiet. I just didn't say anything, and that was the path of least resistance. And so I became a performer. But this imprint of who a father is powerful. So we husbands, the best description of us is to be fatherly to our wives, to be fatherly to our children, to be fatherly to everyone else. You would see the term shepherd and shepherding like a pastor, being pastoral. And we provide that kind of environment in our homes and for our wives. So there you have it. If you want to talk more about this, please. And also, do jot down questions, because we'll be doing Q&A later on. And you'll get, it can be all to Lucia. You can ask them all to Lucia. But any questions fair. It's just us. And so please have those in mind and jot down if you think you're going to forget something. All right, so we're going to, what's the schedule? We're going to break, and then the wives. Who's got the sheet? Honey?
Yes, sir. So it looks like, let's see, 1:30, we can move Zoom to 3:30 for godly wives.
Okay. So just for godly wives? Will anybody be in here, or? Just kidding. All right, let me pray, and then we'll go break. Father, you are our Father. You're our Heavenly Father, and thank you for so many things, but in this talk, thank you for your example. You are fatherly to all of us, and I ask, Father, that you would, for us men, that you would continue to grow us up into being fatherly, being good husbandmen, good gardeners, as we tend to the soil, and that our wives would be the recipients of your care through us, and they would experience that. Lord, if there's any conviction that's legit, then let it linger, And until transformation happens, if there's any conviction that's not legit, may it escape quickly, that no one has any sense of false guilt or false conviction. But Father, help us not to dismiss things that we do need to address in our lives. We love you and thank you again for this privilege to be able to communicate on your behalf in Christ's name. Amen. Thank you so much. Andrew.